I'm just really excited. I'm lucky to be here and to have been drafted here last year and for this franchise to put so many great resources in.
The basketball world just exploded. 2 minutes ago, news broke that sent shockwaves through every corner of women's sports. Caitlin Clark, the rookie sensation who single-handedly transformed the WNBA, has officially signed with Unrivaled. The $75 million deal that everyone thought was just another internet rumor? It's real, and the implications are absolutely staggering. Right now, phones are buzzing in front offices across America. Veteran players are staring at their screens in disbelief. WNBA executives are scrambling for damage control because what just happened wasn't supposed to happen. Not like this. Not this fast. The most watched rookie in women's basketball history just made a decision that could reshape the entire landscape of professional women's sports forever. But how did we get here? How did whispers in back rooms turn into the most explosive signing in women's basketball history? The story begins months ago when rumors started spreading like wildfire through basketball circles. People were talking, but nobody wanted to believe it. Caitlin Clark, fresh off her record-breaking rookie season with the Indiana Fever, was quietly being courted by Unrivaled, the ambitious new startup league that promised to revolutionize women's basketball. At first, it seemed impossible. Unrivaled had already assembled most of their roster. Why would they suddenly pivot and chase Clark so aggressively? The timing felt wrong. The logistics seemed complicated. And frankly, nobody thought Clark would even consider leaving the WNBA so early in her career. But behind closed doors, conversations were happening that would change everything. The mastermind behind this entire operation? Breanna Stewart, one of Unrivaled's founders, who reportedly reached out to Clark personally while keeping everyone else completely in the dark. Picture this: secret phone calls, encrypted messages, meetings that never officially happened. Stewart understood something that others missed. Clark wasn't just another talented player. She was a cultural phenomenon, and whoever secured her signature would hold the key to women's basketball's future. While Stewart was orchestrating this elaborate courtship, other superstars like Angel Reese and Aya Wilson believed they were the untouchable faces of this new basketball era. They had no idea that behind closed doors, Clark was being offered what insiders are calling the golden key to an entirely different kingdom. The secrecy wasn't just strategy, it was survival. Because once word leaked about the numbers being discussed, everything would change. And those numbers? They were absolutely mind-blowing. Sources close to the negotiations revealed that Unrivaled wasn't just making an offer, they were making a statement. The kind of offer that compared to Lionel Messi's historic contract with Inter Miami. Yes, you heard that right. We're talking about Messi-level money in women's basketball. The audacity was breathtaking, but the logic was crystal clear. Unrivaled had initially underestimated the gravity of Clark's presence. They watched her rookie season unfold like everyone else. But somewhere along the way, they realized they weren't just witnessing another promising player emerge. They were watching the birth of a superstar who could transcend sports entirely. Packed arenas, sold-out jerseys, viral moments that dominated social media feeds for days. Clark hadn't just become the face of modern women's basketball overnight. She had become appointment television. The league's founders faced a brutal reality check. Could Unrivaled survive and thrive without Caitlin Clark? The answer, after months of careful analysis, was a resounding no. They needed her more than they had ever needed any player, and they were willing to pay accordingly. But Clark wasn't making this easy for anyone. In her typically enigmatic style, she began dropping subtle hints that those celebrating her absence from Unrivaled might have spoken too soon. Her cryptic social media posts and carefully worded interviews suggested something big was brewing. She understood that her eventual decision wouldn't just impact her career, it could elevate an entire league from experimental curiosity to cultural milestone. The behind-the-scenes maneuvering started feeling less like sports negotiations and more like a high-stakes spy thriller. Non-disclosure agreements were flying around like confetti. Private phone calls happened at odd hours. Agents were sworn to secrecy. The entire situation developed an atmosphere of political intrigue that made basketball fans feel like they were watching House of Cards instead of SportsCenter. Meanwhile, the WNBA watched nervously from the sidelines. The league was in its 28th season, still fighting tooth and nail for mainstream recognition that had always felt just out of reach. Clark's arrival had offered them something they'd been desperately seeking for years: viral reach and sustained media attention. Attendance had surged by over 50%. Television ratings were breaking records. Suddenly, women's basketball wasn't just surviving, it was thriving. But now another league was knocking at their Golden Girls' door, and the WNBA realized they were entering uncharted territory. This wasn't just about competition anymore. This was about choice, power, and leverage in ways that women's professional sports had never experienced before. Clark had become the hottest name in women's sports, and wherever she decided to plant her flag, the entire basketball world would be forced to pay attention. Then came the bombshell that changed everything. $75 million. That's the number that leaked and sent every sports media outlet into overdrive. To put this in perspective, Aya Wilson, the reigning WNBA MVP and one of the most dominant players in the league, earns approximately $230,000 annually. Clark's potential deal with Unrivaled would make her the highest-paid women's basketball player in history by an absolutely staggering margin. The offer wasn't just about playing basketball. Unrivaled was essentially asking Clark to become the very face of their league, the centerpiece around which their entire marketing strategy would revolve. They were betting their entire house on a single player, gambling that Clark's star power could single-handedly legitimize their ambitious vision. Stewart's strategy of keeping everything under wraps suddenly made perfect sense. She wanted to create maximum suspense, build anticipation, and then drop the news like an atomic bomb across the basketball landscape. But secrecy always carries risks. Other players, once they learned about the rumored figures, couldn't help but feel overlooked or completely left out of the conversation. Imagine being a veteran player who has fought for every ounce of recognition, every dollar of salary, every moment of media attention for years, only to watch a rookie get offered superstar money and global perks that seemed impossible just months ago. The emotional dynamics were getting complicated and fast. But Unrivaled's vision extended far beyond just basketball games. Their master plan included massive endorsement packages, guaranteed television appearances, and promises of international expansion that could take women's basketball to markets that had never been seriously pursued before. They weren't trying to create just another league. They were attempting to birth an entire movement, complete with new revenue streams that could finally give women's basketball players the financial respect they had been seeking for decades. The media partnerships were already falling into place. TNT Sports had reportedly struck a deal with Unrivaled for over 45 primetime games across 6 years, with a package valued at more than $100 million. When you compared those numbers to the WNBA's average viewership of around 657,000 viewers per game in 2024, Unrivaled's massive investment in Clark started looking less like wild spending and more like calculated genius. But this story isn't just about money and television contracts. It's about the human element, the emotions, the relationships that were being tested by Clark's meteoric rise. The so-called Clark effect had transformed women's basketball in ways that nobody fully anticipated. Crowds were louder, arenas were fuller, social media engagement was through the roof. Her presence had injected an energy into the sport that felt almost electric. However, that same phenomenon was creating tensions that nobody wanted to talk about publicly. When one player's potential contract is 20 times higher than what established veterans earn, it's impossible to ignore the implications. Angel Reese had subtly hinted on social media about newcomers being handed golden tickets, and her frustration was completely understandable. Players who had fought, grinded, and sacrificed for years without seeing anywhere near these kinds of rewards couldn't help but wonder if they were witnessing the price of progress or the beginning of a much deeper divide within women's basketball. The emotional toll was real, even if nobody wanted to address it directly. Yet, there's another side to this story that deserves recognition. Clark's breakthrough moment might be exactly what women's basketball has been waiting for. For decades, players, coaches, and advocates have pushed relentlessly for better pay, superior marketing, and greater visibility. If one young star's influence can finally force leagues, owners, and broadcasters to recognize the true value of women's sports, shouldn't it be celebrated? Perhaps Clark isn't stealing anyone's spotlight. Maybe she's simply holding up a torch bright enough for everyone to share in its glow. The WNBA's ownership groups have historically been slow to invest, cautious about expansion, and hesitant to pour in the kinds of resources that men's leagues have enjoyed for generations. Clark's extraordinary deal might be the proof that women's sports can no longer be treated as afterthoughts or side projects. The Clark effect had been reshaping the basketball landscape since her very first professional game. Venues were forced to change locations just to accommodate the crowds that wanted to see her play. Attendance numbers skyrocketed by nearly 50%. Her games regularly attracted over 1 million television viewers, numbers that were virtually unheard of in the league's history. Jersey sales broke records within hours of being available. Every highlight reel became viral content that reached audiences far beyond traditional basketball fans. She wasn't just raising the profile of the Indiana Fever. She was injecting energy into an entire league, pulling in younger demographics and fans who had never watched a WNBA game in their lives. In many ways, her arrival felt like a gift to women's sports, the spark that everyone had been waiting for to ignite mainstream conversation. But here's where the story takes its most fascinating turn. Before Unrivaled ever entered the picture, another unlikely suitor had been pursuing Clark with equally aggressive tactics. Ice Cube's Big Three League, traditionally a men's 3-on-3 format featuring former NBA legends, had made Clark an offer that would have been 6 times higher than what retired NBA stars in their league were earning. The Big Three's top players typically earned between $100,000 and $500,000 per season. For Clark, Cube was allegedly prepared to break every precedent with a deal that would have dwarfed anything the league had previously offered anyone. Why such boldness? Because Cube and his team recognized something that many others were still figuring out. Clark wasn't just a basketball player. She was a movement unto herself. Her brand, her charisma, her ability to attract audiences across all demographics made her more valuable than marquee names who had spent entire careers in NBA spotlights. The fact that such an offer was even publicly discussed showed just how disruptive Clark's presence had become throughout the entire basketball ecosystem. Ice Cube believed that Clark could bring something entirely revolutionary to his league. Her star power transcended gender, age, and even sports themselves. She wasn't simply playing women's basketball anymore. She had become a magnet pulling fans from every corner of the sporting world, creating crossover appeal that most athletes never achieve. But Clark's response surprised everyone who thought they understood her motivations. She politely declined Cube's ambitious vision, choosing instead to plant her roots firmly in the WNBA soil. In an era where athletes frequently chase quick glory or immediate financial gain by jumping between leagues and opportunities, Clark's decision spoke volumes about her character and long-term vision. Her choice demonstrated loyalty, purpose, and belief in something bigger than individual success. She didn't view the WNBA as merely a paycheck or stepping stone. She saw it as her home base, the place where she could grow, compete, and elevate an entire generation of athletes alongside her. It was principle over paycheck, a philosophy that has become increasingly rare in modern professional sports. Clark's commitment set a new gold standard for loyalty in an industry that's often defined by whoever can offer the biggest contract or flashiest opportunity. Yet the rumors and speculation refused to disappear. Questions lingered about alternative timelines and missed opportunities. This left Unrivaled in an initially awkward position. At first, Clark seemed like an afterthought to their grand plans. With most of their roster already assembled, whispers began circulating about whether they had underestimated her value or were simply waiting for the perfect moment to make their move. But when they finally returned to the negotiating table with that jaw-dropping $75 million offer, it became crystal clear that they understood they weren't just chasing another talented player. They were pursuing history itself, attempting to secure the signature that could define the future of women's professional basketball. And now, just minutes ago, that pursuit reached its stunning conclusion. Caitlin Clark has officially signed with Unrivaled, and the basketball world will never be the same. She has become more than just a rookie sensation or record-breaking performer. She's evolved into a symbol of ambition, loyalty, and vision that transcends traditional sports boundaries. Every decision she makes feels less like a simple business transaction and more like a legacy being written in real time. Fans aren't just watching her career unfold. They're witnessing a movement develop one choice at a time, understanding that they're living through a pivotal moment in sports history. The shockwaves from this signing will reverberate through every level of women's basketball for years to come. The WNBA must now figure out how to move forward without their brightest star. Unrivaled has secured the centerpiece of their revolutionary vision. And Caitlin Clark has just written the next chapter of what might be the most fascinating career story in modern sports. The game has officially changed, and we're all just trying to keep up.